Going to scientific conferences can be a lot of fun, and it's a great way to share your work and learn about the work of others. And one of the great things about conferences is you kind of get to see things that are hot off the press. You get to meet a lot of people, do some networking, and get to really engage in some really great science. But if you don't know what to expect from a scientific conference, it can seem a little scary. And so here's a quick guide. So maybe you're going to your first conference, you're not sure what to expect. Basically, there will be research talks, poster sessions, formal networking and career development events, industry-sponsored workshops, informal networking, and exhibit halls. This is assuming it's of a bigger conference. For some of the smaller conferences, maybe you won't have some of those events like the industry-sponsored workshops and things, but if you're going to a bigger conference, you often will have one of those. So let me just briefly walk through what each of these are. If you're a trainee, you're probably most going to be interested or participating actively in the poster sessions in the form of actually presenting your work. And this is a really, really, really great opportunity for training scientists to present their work, as well as to really get on the radar of people, meet people, and maybe make some connections for the next step in your career. But I'm going to start with the research talks. And so research talks, who are these by? They're by various people. So there are various types of talks. And so some of them are going to be selected from abstracts. And so when you go and you submit to present at a conference, you typically submit a poster abstract. And then you can say whether you would like to be considered for a talk. And then they'll look through the abstracts and they'll choose some of them for talks. And then most of them will get chosen for posters. And then if there's something that your abstract just really doesn't meet the qualifications, or maybe it's not right for the conference, then you might not get your poster abstract accepted. But typically the poster abstracts will be accepted, and then some of them will be selected for research talks. There will also be talks from invited speakers. And so some of these are like keynotes and plenaries. And these are kind of bigwig scientists, really important scientists. Sometimes they've won prizes and they're giving their kind of acceptance speeches. But unlike the Oscars and things, they're going to actually be research talk acceptance speeches. But they often will be kind of longer talks that are going to maybe even go over things from their career. And then sometimes there'll be flash talks, and these could be associated with posters. And so you're giving a quick blurb about what your poster is or something. So yeah, so those ones that were selected from the abstracts, some of them are shorter and some of them are longer. So for the shorter ones, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, longer ones about 30 minutes. They're typically close to publication or recently published works or papers that are in preprint. And so basically preprint, it's posted online on something like bioRxiv, medRxiv, chemarxiv, archive. There are various preprint servers, Research Square, there's some various ones. And what those have in common is that they're not peer reviewed yet. So they haven't gone through the formal peer review process where they get rigorous scrutiny, but they're kind of posted there so anyone can access them. They're a really great resource, but they should be treated carefully because they are not peer reviewed yet. But sometimes the peer review doesn't really catch things anyway. So just be cautious whatever you read and be critical. Okay, so these talks are often given by postdocs. So people who have gotten their PhD, they go to another lab, they get some more research experience. For example, I did my PhD at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in the lab of Limor Joshua Tor, and then I did a postdoc at UCSF in the laboratory of Denitsa Fujimori. And so I learned different things in both of those, and they shared a connection, and both were really great training opportunities. So the postdocs sometimes will give a talk, and it's a really great thing if you get to be selected for a talk. And so it's a really, really exciting when you're a postdoc or you're a grad student and you get accepted. And so often it's going to be like a senior grad student if it is a grad student. So if you're a grad student going to your first conference, I would not expect to get a talk, but the posters are a really great opportunity. And sometimes those are even actually better in terms of the experience that you'll get out of it and really interacting with people and getting advice about your work and really getting to discuss in detail your work. And then PIs. So principal investigators, primary investigators, there's different things that the PI can stand for, but they're the heads of the lab. They're the bigwigs, they're the bosses, and they're often giving these talks. Then the invited speakers. So, these are the big wigs. And so when I say big wigs, it's people whose work is pretty significant and they've made some contribution to the field that the conference wants to acknowledge and invite, or they have some they're very on topic with things, something that makes them invited for a talk. These are typically going to be longer, 30 minutes to an hour, and sometimes they're going to be in conjunction with the receipt of an award. And so sometimes these are called keynote or plenary lectures. And again, those are kind of the big name scientists. And so often those are kind of advertised for the conference, like, come see this person, this person. And even before they have all of the talks lined up and things, they'll be advertising those keynotes, those plenary lectures. And so note about like keynote versus plenary. So plenary talks are often given by the really big ones. So they're often at a later stage in their career. And it's kind of a sort of overview of their work to a wider audience. Flash talks. So sometimes these flash talks, they're often 5 minutes or so, and they're in conjunction with the poster. So you kind of get to sort of preview your poster and try to convince people to come to your poster. And I'll talk a little bit about some other ways you can kind of convince people to come check out your poster. The logistics can be really hard. When you're at a large conference, there's a lot of talks going on. Sometimes they're going to be located in different rooms on opposite sides of a convention center. So they're typically, you'll have the abstract book and kind of like the schedule ahead of time. And sometimes there are even apps that they have associated with them where you can kind of make your calendar. Know that this is going to be subject to change in terms of what your plans are, because you might run into someone and then have informal talks with them. And those can be actually even more beneficial than going to the formal talks. But if there's something you really, really want to see, you want to make sure that you've got that in your calendar and you know where you want to go. They're often going to be arranged into tracks so that related research is presented in the same room so that you don't have to race across the convention center. And also because sometimes there will be cancellations or delays, and so the timing might be a bit off. And so when you're in one of those rooms, however, then all the talks will be in order. So even if it's late or early, you'll still be there. Okay, now let's go down to the poster sessions. So the poster sessions. Now these are the really thing that makes the scientific conference kind of unique. And so this is something that can't be replicated as easily in a sort of virtual setting. And so virtual conferences can be really great, but one of the things you really miss out on is some of the communication, some of the interactions that take place around the poster sessions. And so there can be virtual poster sessions, but I feel like they're not really the same. Like it's one thing to look at a poster, but it's another thing to really engage with the poster authors. And so one of the great things about posters is that these are going to be works in progress usually, often going to be given by students and postdocs. And at large meetings, what they're going to have is you'll have like a poster, your abstract will be assigned a number. And so an abstract, this is basically when you submit to the conference, you submit a blurb about what your research is. And that is your research abstract. So similarly to how a paper has an abstract, a poster will have an abstract. And so the talks will have an abstract. And basically, these will all be available for the people who go to the conference to read and try to choose what to go to. And so often when you get that abstract book, you're going to be checking out the different abstracts, maybe searching for various terms that you're really interested in, and then making a note of the poster numbers, and when they're going to be presented. The posters are typically going to be presented over several days in different sessions. And so you're going to have a session assigned to you, and you'll have your poster hung up for just one of them. And then during that time, it's even divided up. And so that there's like odd numbers will have to stand by their posters for like these 2 hours, and then even numbers stand by theirs for these 2 hours. And so if you want to talk to the author of a poster, you want to make sure that you go during that time when they're actually going to be standing there. But their poster will be up that whole day. But it's not going to be up on the other days. So make sure that you go and you check out the posters you really want to see. If you're presenting a poster, consider making a QR code, and that QR code can take people to a PDF version. But first, I just want to make sure that you know, like some PIs are really kind of they want to make sure that your work isn't scooped or stuff, and so you want to make sure that you get their permission before doing that, so that especially because poster the work is typically like a work in progress. It's not something that's published. And so if your PI isn't comfortable having that data public, then don't do this with that. Don't do this. But if they are cool with it, then making a QR code and having a virtual PDF can be a really great thing. You can also do a video walkthrough of your poster, and you can have the QR code take people to that video walkthrough. You can take it to a preprint associated with your paper, various things like this to make it kind of interactive. And keep your nose out of your phone no matter how awkward you feel. So sometimes it's really awkward when you're standing at your poster and there's like no one coming to you and there's people all around and there's people at the posters next to you and you're feeling really left out and sad. And don't go on your phone. That's going to make it so that nobody's going to want to come up to you. And so you just want to kind of smile, maybe engage with people as they're walking by. And yeah, so try not to make your poster too cluttered. The key to a good poster, is that you want to maximize the white space. Let figures and graphics do the heavy lifting rather than the text. Things do not need to be as detailed as they would be in a paper. The goal of the poster is to you kind of like use bullet point summaries and have those figures make it so that people are going to want to come to your poster. Often it's nice to have like a graphical abstract. You don't need to have that, but like so here's one from my grad school poster. You can see I kind of have a graphical abstract of what's going on. I have headers that kind of make things stand out. I have lots of figures that are kind of making the points rather than having a lot of text. And using color, aligning things. And so you can I make my posters in like Adobe Illustrator. A free alternative is Inkscape. You can also make them in PowerPoint or Google Slides or something like this. Pay careful attention to make sure that everything's aligned nicely, that your spacing is even, that you have space. You want to do all that good stuff. Make sure you have your citations, like your references. You typically don't have very many references. It's not as much as like a paper or something like that. But you do want to have acknowledgments and funding. You want to have your conclusions. You want to have a little bit of your methods and your results and all that good stuff. There are lots of great resources online to help you design your posters, as well as poster templates to get you started. The key is to really look at examples, see what works, what doesn't work, and know that it takes time to make a poster, and you'll probably have to go multiple rounds of back and forth with your PI or things like this to really nail things down. And so this was my first poster. This is Dr. Jeff Sigmund. And well, maybe this was my second poster, but anyway, this is my first lab. This is Dr. Jeff Sigmund. This was when I was at St. Mary's as a student, and now I'm there as a professor, and I'm about to take my first students to their first conference. And so, which was the first conference I went to when I was an undergraduate. So super duper excited about that. If you are viewing a poster session, so scout out ahead which posters you want to go through. And also what you can do is really great is before the people actually go stand by their posters, go scout out the posters. And so the posters are going to be like up all day. And so you can walk around the poster hall. Like it might be open only certain hours, but then you can walk around the poster hall during that time. And it can be a lot less awkward when there's no one around and you can kind of see everything better. And then you can go ahead and kind of read through the posters a little more, make note of the ones that you really want to go back to. And so sometimes there's a lot of posters you want to visit, and you can really get stuck at one and realize it's not the thing you really wanted to go to. And so if you scout ahead of time, you're able to kind of prioritize which ones you really want to go to when the speaker's there. Because one of the great things about poster sessions is that you can go and you can actually talk to the people and ask them to walk you through their poster, especially students. So even if maybe it's not the work you're most interested in, but there's a student, you see that student who's over there and looks really sad because no one's talking to them, go over to that student, talk to them, be that cool person. And so sometimes there's some really great work going on, and even if they don't, it's a learning opportunity for them, and it'll be really great experience for them to have someone really engage with them in that way. The poster sessions are really awesome. You can get a lot of really great information from the authors themselves. And so maybe it's an author who actually wrote a paper that you are using, and you have like a detailed question about it, or you want to get some more experimental details. That's a really great thing about the poster session, is that you can actually engage with the authors more than in this, like the presenters, even more than you could with a talk. And so as a student and things, I really loved the poster sessions, and I really still do love them. Another great thing about it kind of being works in progress is that you get the chance to get feedback on your work and maybe get ideas that will help you to do further experiments, to really beef up your work, to answer questions, like experimental type questions. You might also get new experimental type questions to want to go and explore. And maybe you'll see other people's posters or talks that will give you ideas about experiments or about questions in your own research that you can then go and follow up on. So you kind of So that's one of the best things about science conferences as a trainee is you really get those sorts of insights into your work, into techniques. You get to experience the larger scientific community. And maybe you can't do a technique directly, but maybe you can actually go and find a collaborator or find a postdoc lab to go and train in where you could learn that technique. So lots of great opportunities as a trainee. It's a lot of fun too, presenting posters as well as just kind of walking around and engaging with people in the poster session. You can also do a lot of informal networking during that. And then there are formal networking and career development events. Now, let me say that I am actually a major introvert. And so I find conferences like super duper exhausting from the socialization standpoint. But it's also really, really important. And I've made some really great connections at posters sessions and at conferences in general. And conferences are a way when I get to kind of meet up with some of the other undergraduate educators in the communities which I work with, like online and stuff. And so the Malady Heterogeneous Cures community, the MCC, I have a lot of friends there who I'm going to meet up with, as well as like BioMolVis, a molecular visual literacy group I work with. So various things like that. And it's really great to be able to see those colleagues that I don't see that often. Okay, but there are also the formal networking and career development events, especially for trainees. These can be really, really important. They've got workshops on CV preparation, job searches, etc., as well as meetups of people at similar training levels and or research interests. So they'll often have like various times when people with this interest will go to this like space on the hall at this time. They'll have kind of one-on-one mentors guidance. And so you can sign up for a slot to talk to a career guidance person. They might even have free headshots, various things like that. There are also industry-sponsored workshops sometimes, and so you can learn how to use equipment, techniques. There'll also often be non-industry sponsored workshops, and so maybe these are put on by various scientific societies, maybe even the conference organizers themselves. They could just be groups of scientists with the similar interests that put on a workshop. And so, as an educator, too, I often appreciate how they have various workshops on various teaching strategies and tools that I can use in the classroom. And then all the informal networking. So whether like sometimes like I was saying before, like even if you're planning to go to this talk and then you end up meeting someone along the way. And so I'm like was planning to go to a talk when I went to the ASBMB conference last year. And then I met this undergrad along the way who was a follower of mine and had some questions for me and ended up having this like hour-long talk with them. And it was just this really great experience for both of us. And so, yes, I missed that talk, but I had a much, much more valuable talk that I was actually able to go to. And so, kind of, that's again like stay off your phone. Just kind of, I know it's hard and I know it's really exhausting being emotionally on all the time. And so, but just try to make it to the day and then you can go crash in the hotel room at night. Friend of a friend connections and stuff like that. Just make the most of your time there. And finally, one of the ways to make the most of your time is to get swag. And so vendors are going to try to sell you stuff, but they'll also give you discount codes. So I'm excited getting like starting my new lab at LMU in the fall and trying to like figure out how I can some of these like they have new lab startup discounts and things and try to learn about some of the things that I might want to purchase with my startup money. But also the swag. And so I'm really hoping that we get some of those little floaties to put your microcentrifuge tubes in to like keep them in the water bath and stuff so that we don't have to keep using little plastic lids. But anyway, yeah, this can be a fun way to learn about techniques too. And fancy equipment you know that you'll probably never get to have access to. But it's cool to see kind of what you might be reading about in papers and talk to some of the vendors. So yeah, that's about it. That's what to expect from your conference. If you're going to a conference, it's really, really exciting. I'm so, so happy for you. I hope you're really, really excited. And conferences can be really expensive too. So look into formal funding opportunities. So these can be things through the conference. They often have travel awards. Sometimes you probably have to be like a member to get those awards. There's also a lot of like regional conferences you might be able to go to without having to go fly somewhere. There are, if you're an undergraduate or even a postdoc, the price for the registration for the conference is a lot lower. As and so it's a really, really great opportunity to go to a conference, even if you're not presenting, but if you're presenting a poster, especially so. And so I'm just so excited that I'm going to take students to their first conference. And my first conference is a really transformative experience for me, and I just can't wait to experience that with my students. And so hope this helps you and have a great time at whatever conference you're going to.